The revelations now televised. A platform for you and I. And now look with full heart and clear eyes. Now, these are just my thoughts. Truth on how I feel on these topics I reveal. Please know my toll, I always keep it real. Can't face the word if you can't face facts. For your time, just open up your mind. That's it, just live, think big, now take that. With God in me, this here was made by design. Yeah, the revelation will be televised. REVELSations.
Welcome back to the REVELSations Podcast. I have Dr. Nadia Brown. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me. Dr. Brown, I know a little bit about you. I've been doing some research, but how about you just introduce yourself to the masses, to the people, and let them know how wonderfully awesome you are.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm Nadia, Dr. Nadia, and I lead the Doyenne Agency, where we work with founders and teams and helping them improve their sales skills. I'm also a podcast host. I'm an author. So lots of things that I get to do in my day-to-day work.
Like I said, wonderfully awesome. That's just your tag. Dr. Brown, wonderfully awesome. Well, no, thank you for joining me today. And you and I are here to discuss, like, at large, empowering women in the financial space, but more specifically, how you do things. So what got you into this space and the idea that, you know what, there's a niche market for empowering women and I want to do that? I know you are a woman, but what made you say this is what I want to go after?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. Well, one is when I first started in business, I wanted to do the work that I wanted to do, but I did not understand all it took to run a business. And one of those things that really challenged me was sales. So there was that. So through my own journey of figuring out how to do sales, I learned that I was not alone. And when you look at the statistics, only 12% of women business owners ever hit 100,000 in annual revenue. And in terms of running an actual business, that's not a lot of money.
Well, can you say that again for the people in the back? The stat, because
Yes.
I think I might be one of the people that you said 12%. Say it again.
Right. I read it. When I read it, I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. Only 12% hit 100,000.
Wow.
And so there's a large number of amazing women out here, talented, brilliant, that aren't reaching the status and they don't make the money to really achieve the financial freedom that they're after. And so that's why I'm so excited and passionate about my work.
Okay. Wow. So you found that niche market, which is great. If only 12% are doing that. And like you said, 100,000 in revenue is not a lot of money when you think about it. Now, when I was coming up, yes, it is. Praise God. Like we get $100,000, like, yes. But now as the inflation in the world is going, it's not. So, okay. So you decided I'm going to get in here and I'm going to help. So how did you start? How did you begin? You want to help. So how did that journey begin?
Well, one, I had to first help myself. So as I mentioned earlier, I was not great at sales. I actually hated sales. I had all my stories. And so just figuring out how Nadia could sell in a way that was authentic and effective. And then being able to, then go share that with other women. Because research also shows that most women founders start a business because they're passionate about something. But we both know passion doesn't pay the bills. So how do you build a profitable, sustainable business where you can pay your business bills, but also pay yourself and be able to bring home money? So starting to have that money conversation, but then also doing trainings and different things to equip women in being able to do sales and also build that sales support within their companies.
Okay, that's fantastic. I have had a couple of sales jobs in my life and I didn't like it. It just wasn't my thing, but it was like the grassroots cold calling or knocking at the door type of thing. And I wasn't into that. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this education route. And that's where I found myself. But I think it's awesome. So these entrepreneurial women, we are in a boom where people would rather work for themselves. They would rather be their own boss, or, I've heard fire your boss and become your own boss. But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. You eat what you
Absolutely.
kill type of thing. And that's in the sales world. So can you explain the ideology that one might need to be successful in sales, and then why you think women have not been? Why is it only 12%? What's going on? Where's that gap that's causing women who are capable of doing great things to not be flourishing? Like your sign says over your head there, not flourishing in this space.
Oh my gosh. I think one is women often feel similarly, like you mentioned, they don't like sales. And in many ways that we've been taught to sell, it just doesn't fit our personality. So one of the things is the majority of the women we work with, they do a lot of more inbound marketing. So you're not necessarily doing cold calling. Now people are coming to you. So you have to make sure your marketing, your messaging, and all of that stuff is on point. But then when you have the actual conversation, you have to have the skills and the mindset in order to have that conversation. And one thing I teach is to focus on relationship and connection. And so it's not this, we're going to meet one time and immediately close a sale. That may not be the case. That may not be your business model, and that's 100% fine. But how are you continuing to build and nurture that particular relationship so that when your ideal clients are ready to move forward and you have that particular solution to help them, you can then close that sale. So it's not all about go, 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 sell, 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 close, close, close. Like, we don't subscribe to always be closing, but we do subscribe to always be connecting.
So that connection piece, I actually would think that women would succeed more because things are more about relationships. Men, I think by nature more than nurture, are more transactional. I think that's how God designed us to be. And then women are more connecting. So when you say it's not your personality, the women's personality in general, I think the way you phrased it and said, hey, let's turn this from transaction to connection. I understand. That's nice. That's awesome. How have women that you've served sort of taken to that ideology that, you know what, this is more about a connection and less about a transaction?
They actually get excited. So then clients relax. So then it's like, okay, now I can go into this conversation and I can just focus on connection. I can focus on asking the right questions. I can focus on how I can be a solution provider and really be an asset versus ways. I remember when I first got in business, in ways I was taught to sell. I was like, I would never do that. I would never do that. But I was like, I need to sell something, so I got to figure this out. And so you either figure out how to operate in that world, or you figure out how to do it differently. And that's where women really begin to, like you said, flourish, because now they can have conversations, they can close sales, they can honor people's buying process. Because on that transaction side, a lot of times people need time to sleep on it. Well, in the old school, it's like if someone says that they need to sleep on it or they need to think about it, oh, that's an objection. We immediately got to shut that down because we need to get the credit card today. And it's like, can we honor that and still close the sale if that is the right person to work with? And that's possible.
So I'm not a sales guru. I'm good at what I'm good at. I'm not good at what I'm good at. I know my lane. So I'm going to ask you some questions. Please forgive me if they're elementary. From what I understand in sales, people are either selling a product or a service. It's pretty much all you can sell. Either, product somebody can buy or a service. Are you finding that women in your space are selling more products or services? Is it a 50-50 split? I have a follow-up question after you answer, but where are you finding women that you work with, aligning more product or service?
The majority of the women we work with are service-based.
Okay, service-based. And then again, that's a connection they want to take care of. See, that's what a service provides you to take care. So I really like that idea. So, okay. So now, I'm going to, I should ask this first. Were you your first client? You said you had to learn it yourself. Were did you test out your system on yourself first?
Kinda. So in my experience in learning sales, that's a whole different story. So part of that journey, I was on a team and I was learning sales. And it was kind of covert because when I joined that team, I had no idea I was going to be in a sales role. But as part of that training, I then had the opportunity to then start training other people. And that honestly was in that experience when people started reflecting back to me and they started reaching out to me, asking me questions around sales and asking for support. And they're like, you actually helped me. I was like, oh, wait, I did, because my whole mindset at that time was I just need to learn how to do this for myself. I was never thinking that I would then take that skill set and train others.
Well, blessings run through us. They don't just come to us, right?
That's
They
true.
run through us. And looking on your website, you actually have a book like Sell Like a Lady. So is that a strategy you developed on your own? And you're like, hey, you know what? I have this system that you might have learned not knowing that one day, essentially, you would be selling your system to others. I think that's pretty amazing. How'd the book come about?
So in the subtitle of that book, How to Master Sales with Dignity, Class, and Grace, a big part of that was when you think about sales, and you even mentioned it earlier, and it's common. I had the same reaction. I don't want to do sales. I don't want to be a salesperson. I don't even want to be affiliated with sales. But when you have a business, you need sales, right? Somebody has to do sales. And so part of that book, though, is to start to shift the conversation, the narrative, the attitude around selling. You can do sales with dignity. You can do sales with integrity. You don't have to be overly aggressive or manipulative to be successful in sales.
There is a stigma. If I think somebody is selling me something, I shut down
immediately.
Yep. And my no game is strong. You hear me? Like, it is strong. No, I could need water. You could have it. If I think you're trying to sell it to me, nope, I'd rather die like that because of the stigma of the sale. So I think it's wonderful that you are doing that. So, okay. So now we have a system in place. We'll promote the book and things, and we'll get people to your website, of course. So we saw a problem. You got a system, you have a system in place and all that. Okay. So now that system leads to something you said earlier. You said financial freedom. So a lot of people say it. I don't think people necessarily knows what that means. So can you explain in your definition or how you explain to your clients what financially free is?
Being financially free. One, it is a very personal question. So a lot of times I ask women, one, what is their big why? Because again, most women start a business because of a why that was beyond money. And two, what do you want from this business? A lot of times it's time freedom so that they can have the flexibility to be with their family. Great. Then what number, because that number will differ, right? Do you need to generate in your business in order to make that happen? But the other thing is I have found, and I was guilty of this for many years, longer than I care to admit, where I didn't pay myself. So my business is doing its thing, but I remember I didn't even think to pay myself, which is crazy. Because again, it was like, I'm so focused on growing this business that I kind of sort of took me out completely out of the equation. And at some point, somebody was like, Nadia, how much do you pay you? And I was like, oh, I don't know. So in that, what do you need to bring home to create that type of financial freedom? And that's the conversation. There's a business, but then there's home, and everyone's home obviously looks different. What do you need to start bringing home to really set up yourself for freedom?
I think that's awesome. We'll get to the home thing because I have an opinion, but I'm outside of the space. And I'm always up for my opinions to be challenged and maybe be changed, but that financial freedom. And I think what happens is a lot of times people believe financial freedom means I don't have to work. And I'm like, no, people that run the business oftentimes work more than people that work for the business, right? The boss works all the time. So if it's not, I don't have to work anymore. Financially freedom is what? Not depending on somebody else necessarily to pay you. If you could break it down in layman's terms, I'm going to say for other people, but I really mean it's for me, if I'm being honest. If you could break it down, what like financially free, if you have to do it at the elementary level, what does it mean?
So that's a great question, because there are people that want to do it in the business and they want to work for themselves. So their free is, I just don't want a boss. I don't necessarily want to deal with corporate and politics in that particular space. So financially free is me and maybe another person. I work on my projects, I'm good. And so whatever that number looks like. But when you get to, I want to not necessarily work, then financially free looks very different. So even I'll use myself as an example. I remember when we shifted and I moved into this space around sales and I launched the agency. So I made that pivot. One of the things as I sat and thought about my big vision, I was just like, I want to build a business that one day won't be solely dependent on Nadia.
There
right?
it is.
That's a different conversation. And that's a different business model, because at some point, I either need to have a crap ton of automation and digital products to really run on their own that won't rely on me, or I'm going to have to build a team that at some point will allow me to remove myself from the day-to-day. And again, earlier when I talked about numbers, now again, what numbers do I need to generate in the business, or what does the business need to generate to not only support whatever I want to bring home to support that lifestyle? Because if I'm not working, then I want to travel and do some other things, but you need money to pay for that, right? And I now also need to be able to pay for, the business has to be able to pay for these people that are working in this business to keep it going while I'm out on the beach.
Exactly. I'm gonna quote James Brown here. Gotta pay the cost to be the boss. It is hard, right?
Yes.
it's a cost with leadership. So you said home, and I wanna shift cost, that word cost, a little bit. Everything has an opportunity cost. This is what I took I'm a historian by nature. I'm a teacher and educator by trade, but I had to take an economics class, I should say, sorry. And I only learned a couple of things from that class way back when. And one of the things was opportunity cost, and everything has an opportunity cost. So I have talked to women, I've talked to men, and women have to balance this. I want to work, I want to be a giant in my space, versus home, the family part. So do you well, I'm not going to ask, do you, because I know you run against that with women. They're like, how can I be a mom and a wife and be a business owner? Do I have to sacrifice being married? Do I have to be single? Because it seems like, unfortunately, we live in a world where men are allowed to, I don't want to say neglect the family, but it's more socially acceptable for a man to work 80 hours a week than it is a woman.
Absolutely.
I'm serious when I say this. I know zero men that would be okay with their wife or significant other working that much. I don't know a woman who would be upset if their man worked that much, as long as he's bringing it home. So that is what I want to discuss. How do you talk to women who approach you and say, I want to do great things in my business, in sales, but I'm afraid it's going to cost me my family, or if I'm single, it's going to cost me an opportunity to be married and have a family?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Sorry. Again, that's my teacher in me. I know how to dig in there.
It's a good conversation to have. One, you have to be honest, not only with yourself, but if you have a spouse, like I have a spouse, right? So we've had to have those conversations. In those early days, you're right, there was a lot of what's going on with this business kind of conversations we had. I think it's important, one, to set boundaries. So one of the things that I personally did, because when I came into business, I started to see a lot of women that had success that I thought I wanted financially, but it cost them their marriage. Now, I wasn't married to those people, so I don't know. He could have been a horrible dude. I don't know. But I like my dude. So I was like, look, I don't want to build a business at the expense of my marriage, right? Like that's important to me personally. So what does that mean? Like, what does that look like? And I think a big part of it is open communication. Like, business ebbs and flows. There are times when it's busy, like I'm about to enter a super busy season. I'm already talking to my family. Like, look, it's going to be about a good 5 weeks where it's going to look a little crazy around here. Y'all bear with me. But it's, having those conversations. If I'm traveling. So I traveled a lot more before we adopted our daughter. Then we have a child. It's like, well, okay, what does that look like? But again, a lot of conversation. And then looking at your business to see how you adjust. Because you talked about opportunity costs. You can't chase every opportunity when you're in business.
True.
And so then it's like, all right, I got a husband, I have children, or I want to have a husband and I want to have children. Then how do I structure my business to support my lifestyle instead of my business running my lifestyle and dictating my lifestyle? And you have to make decisions, very strategic decisions that not only make sense for business, but also make sense for family. And that means that, ladies, that means you have to say no to some stuff.
Yep.
You can't do everything. Absolutely. You can't take everything. You can't take every project. You can't follow every business model. There's so many ways you can grow your business, but there's only maybe 1 or 2 ways it's going to make sense seasonally also for where you are family-wise, relationship-wise, etc.
So that sparked a couple of thoughts in me. Well, first I'm going to give an opinion, then I'm going to ask a question. Well, life is not fair, right? Where men, biologically, we don't have to put anything on hold to birth a child, right? So a woman who's running a business or something like that, and she wants to have a child, biologically, she wants to give birth to a child. She's going to, there's going to be a time where she's going to have to not work. She's going to not be available to her business.
Absolutely.
Right? We're a man, we hope he would never do this, but he can get 20 women pregnant and he can still be available to his business. Biologically, he can. It's just the way God set it up. I didn't do it. I'm just born here. I say this all the time. I just work here. That's not my, I just work here, right? I didn't do it. So going back to that 12%, how much of I'm going to try to put it in the word, like the family dynamic, or women being afraid that they would have to lose their family. Like you said, I don't want this business to cost my marriage, or I have children, so I can't pour as much into it. How much of that factors into women? Only 12% of businesses run by women hitting $100,000 threshold, because I refuse to believe that it's a skill thing, that women aren't skilled enough to be successful. So I'm trying to find the reasons why. And I'm thinking what we just discussed has to be a part of the reason why.
It's definitely an impact. It's definitely an impact. I think that I don't know. I don't have the statistics to support all the reasons why, but like you said, it is. I think another one is looking at structuring your business. I think sometimes from a business perspective, we need to pause and really kind of think out. And sometimes you don't get that. Sometimes you wake up, you're like, oh shoot, we pregnant. Hadn't planned it, hadn't prepared, right? That happens. I get it. Life happens. Life be lifing. Or
it be lifing.
It could be a parent gets ill. I lived through that, right? So you just kind of go with the ebbs and flows. One of the things though that I really want to work with women on is looking at their pricing, because a lot of times we come in and we think that a lower price model, which then requires you to have to generate and have more volume of sales to hit certain sales numbers, really impact your ability to grow the business. Whereas if you had a higher price model based on your services, where it makes sense, then you don't need to have a ton of clients in order to hit certain numbers in your business. And depending on how you set it up, it may also give you that time freedom and things like that. I know it's really hard to be too nuanced in a podcast, but you get where I'm headed in that particular direction.
I'm totally with you. I was the wage disparity gap is a big thing to me. I'm like, why are women getting paid less? And a part of it is the system, and it's a male dominated. Okay, got that. But a part of it is statistically proven that in negotiations, women ask for less.
Yep. Or we don't ask at all. We don't even
as a thing.
Yep. And we bring
Yeah.
that same
Yeah,
mindset
or don't ask at all.
from corporate
Mhm.
into our businesses.
Yes, absolutely. So no, that makes perfect sense. So okay, so now we've taught women. All right, look, there are some sacrifices you're going to have to make. You're going to have to say no to some things. You're going to have to be very strategic in your business versus your, and I don't want to say versus your family, but to balance the two. Okay, so good. And then we have the pricing, hey, don't sell yourself short, right? You're selling the same product as the guy, but your price point's lower, but it doesn't have to be.
Correct.
Right? Am I understanding correctly? Okay, good. So, okay, we got that. So then how do you in your business, and I want to make sure I'm saying it right, is Doyenne? Am I saying it correctly?
Doyenne.
Okay. Yeah, Doyenne business. So I have a sister and I'm like, you know what? She's in sales. I want her to hook up with Dr. Brown, but she doesn't know much. So what are you going to do for her? Talk to my sister who listens to my podcast and say, hey, we can help you this way.
One thing I want to add, and then I'll get to you helping your sister.
Okay.
In looking for women, another thing that we have to be careful of is trying to be every woman. And so don't be afraid to get support, whether it's in business or at home or both. So there is nothing wrong with hiring a nanny or having in-home support with the kids, hiring a housekeeper, a chef, any of those things that help you, or hiring an assistant in the business. So don't try to wear all the hats. And I think a lot of times we do that for too long. And that also contributes to us burning out.
How you gonna go at Whitney like that though? Whitney was telling all you, I'm every woman.
No, don't listen to Whitney. I love her. And I used to sing that song to the top of my lungs. And no, don't try to be every woman.
You know what, girl? It is so true. I'm every woman. It's all in me. And I'm like, well, you know what? No, I have a skill and I'm going to work this skill and then I'm going to have people around me. Correct. This is why we're a team. Together, everyone achieves more. Together, everyone. So it's not a team of I, it's a team of we. Yes. So now my sister, I'm like, hey, you know what? You're going to go to Dr. Brown and she's going to help you in business sales and getting your mentality. So where do we start?
Well, you mentioned it. First, we're going to look at mindset. What is your aversion to sales? How do you define sales? Let's get that redefined. But let's also talk about money, because a lot of times women get uncomfortable talking about money, especially big dollars. Like you said, we bring that mindset over. So let's get comfortable in asking for that. But also it has to make sense. Like we're just not throwing out random numbers based on your business, which then leads to the pricing conversation. If I work mostly with women in services, so we sit down and we do the hard numbers. How much does it really cost you to produce this? And we have to write you in, because we usually discount our time, put that in there. And then whatever that price is, it makes sense. And then how are we going to have the conversation? What questions do you need to ask to really understand, is this my right client? Who is my right client? Where do I need to be? Because I don't need to be everywhere. If I'm focused on working with professional women, then that's where I need to be. I don't necessarily need to be over here with educators, right? If it's a very niche, or if I'm working with people in tech, then why am I over here hanging out with people that aren't in tech, right? So wherever that is, then that's where you need to be. But then having the practice, because I think the practice in let's practice having conversations in a safe environment using your words. So don't try to use Nadia's words, use your own words. And then as you do that, now you have what I call your conversation guide. So now you have a resource that can then help you to have those conversations comfortably, but it feels like you. But practice is where it's really going to be at once you deal with your mindset, your pricing, and you get some practice.
I think that's awesome. You were really helping me with that. I mean, my sister too, but me as well, right? I'm taking some nuggets. I am. I'm not a woman, but I'm definitely taking some nuggets. No, I think that's really awesome. And what are some testimonials you can share or some anecdotal experience you have on women who have gained the financial freedom or the financial flexibility, whatever you want to call it. They were at one place. They went through your system. You were able to help them. How has their life changed for the better?
Ooh, I have a client. I won't share her name, but okay, let's pick a name. We'll call her Betty. But so Betty was actually in a job. So she had been an entrepreneur full time, went through some lifed, had a full-time job, and she was preparing. She was like, Nadia, I'm ready to come out, out. I'm ready to go back to full-time entrepreneurship. I was like, great. Mm-hmm. So we talked about her offer and her price point. So we got it at a price point. Even then, she was rolling her eyes and said, we got this. At that particular time, so there were two things for this one. And at that particular time, my agency would do the sales on behalf of clients. We don't do that anymore, so don't call us for that. We used to. And I told her, I said, we can sell this for you. Give me your number. We can sell this for you. So we did. We sold that particular service for her, got her to her number, her exit number. That was part one, right? So, but then the other part was in having those conversations for her, you start to get feedback. That's the beauty of having sales conversations with people. So you start to see where people may be resistant, what's not clear, how might you make your offer better? So giving her that feedback, I'm like, we can make this particular offer better by adding some different components and also giving people more time to work with you to also just kind of to get through their own process, right? So in that, we ended up eventually shifting her offer and raising the price. Wow. So then she came to one of my trainings and we did exactly what I talked about. We talked about mindset. She put together her own conversation guide. She was able to practice having those conversations. And now she's off doing her own thing. More than doubled the price that was in her initial investment for her offer, doing her own sales, still full-time entrepreneur. That's been like 4 years now. So she's doing great.
And what joy, like did you get from that you were able to help her? So, you got to brag on yourself a little bit. That's all right. Hey, we look, you got to believe in somebody. Might as well believe in me. That's what I say. Right. So like, what do you get out of it? I mean, of course it's a business, but if it's just dollars and cents, I don't think we're going to do it for very long because that's going to get old. So what are you getting out of that, these experiences with Betty and other women who you see that you've been able to help and maybe turn their lives around?
Oh my gosh. It makes me so happy to be able to see them achieve their goals. Like it probably sounds cheesy, but it truly is. Like I get excited, like, oh my gosh, we just knocked it out of the park. I'm sending ring the bell messages because, we're virtual. We don't have actual bell in the office, but it's like, we just closed the sale. You just have this freedom. And to know that she now doesn't have to go into a job that she didn't enjoy and that she gets to serve her clients. But I think especially for women, I know this is also true for men, in that when we are now able to show our children a different option, right? And again, it's that legacy piece, like that ripple effect. I probably won't even know the full impact of that ripple effect of being able to equip women, having more resources. I have another client who I worked with, and in 2 years, we were able to get her company revenue to just shy of $500,000 annually. And I remember the year when she took her, and this was pre-COVID, she took her daughter and her niece, her husband took her daughter and her niece, and they spent like a week in France by the sea, like that. Imagine that experience, right? As a child, me and my cousin get to go hang out in France because my mom had a vision and was able to get her business to this place. And so those are the stories that I live to hear.
No, that's amazing. And you said a word that I want to touch on. It actually leads me to my next question to you. Legacy. We are in 2024, but when we think of legacy, mostly we think of the legacy of the father. We still do, like we still live in this sort of antiquated ideology. So how important is it that young girls right? We already got you work with adults, but I want to get to my nieces, right? My the young girls. How important and impactful is it for them to see women who are doing it, 500,000 in revenue? She's the reason the family's going and dipping their toes in the seas in France. This other woman more than doubled the profitability of her business or whenever it was to sale. How important is it I'm going to hit you with twofold, for girls to see that, but also how important do you think it is for little boys to see that girls can do these great things? So how does this impact the children and just being able to see women doing great things?
Oh, I love that question. I think for girls, I know for my daughter, it gives her an option, right? And my nieces, they see another way. It takes them a while. Like, wait a minute, you work, but you don't ever really leave home or unless I'm traveling, right? But you have an option. You can get a job. We are 100% behind that, but you also have an option where you can build your own, and you don't even have to wait. You can start now at a young age. She has a lot of aunties, business aunties, right? And she gets to see it. Sometimes I take her to events. So she sees these women, and I think it gives her that option to really be able to, one, see that she has a different option versus just getting a job. And not that there's anything wrong with getting a job. I had some really great jobs. And you can get paid really well in jobs. So I'm not poo-pooing on jobs at all. But also, if you build your business up, as a business owner, you can either sell it or you can pass it on, right? So again, generational wealth is another tool for that, or legacy. And now women are able to contribute to that, whereas some years ago, we weren't able to do that. And I think for little boys, it really starts to shift, hopefully, that narrative. And like you said, that antiquation, and with I'm the man and I have to take all the responsibility versus we are a partnership. And our marriage, if we choose to get married, may look very different than traditional roles. And we obviously, there's certain things that just won't change, but when it comes to like children and things, but it lends a different conversation. And I think young people then go into their relationships with a different attitude around gender roles and how they can work together to build a family and build a legacy.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, because it's important for young boys to see women doing it, if you will. That it's important. It's not only important for the little girls to see it. It's important for boys to see it too, that women are capable. Because oftentimes nobody directly tells us. They don't come out and say women are less capable. But I was a boy, and somehow in my brain, I got the idea that women are less capable. Nobody said those words to me, but that formed. And if it's forming in my head, I imagine it's forming in little girls' heads, saying I'm less capable as a little girl. They're saying it as well. So seeing this,
them great allies too, whether they're in corporate, right? Because I remember in corporate having those allies, those people that would advocate for me and on my behalf to help me even advance my career. A lot of that came from men, but men who got it, right? Who understood that I was just as capable as the man sitting next to me. And so whether it's in an actual partner relationship, but even in their corporate careers or in their businesses, they won't, like you said, have that same attitude, because they're like, nope, I know, I saw my mama, right? I saw my mom do it. I saw my auntie do it. I know that women can do it.
I would love to get to the point where we don't have to, like for example, your business isn't geared toward women. It has to be, because women are lagging so far behind that it has to be. I would love for us to get to a point where your business is just for any entrepreneur, right? Where we don't have to target these marginalized groups. I think that's where we want to get, where everybody has the opportunity, and then people can decide, well, I don't want to get into sales. I don't want to get into business on their own. And they're deciding it fully aware of everything, instead of having a lot of conjecture, not having all the information and still making a decision. So I would hope that we can get to that place. And I think what you're doing is God's work, because it is empowering women to still be fully women. Like we spoke about, like having the family. You don't have to sacrifice that for your career. Because at a point I did some work when this is a long time, I'm gonna date myself. When was I getting so this is 2010 or 11 or something, when I was getting my master's degree. And I did some work around the idea of the Black family and marriage. So the name of my thesis was, "Where's my daddy?" And it was a lack of African-American men in the home. And I had to look up marriage statistics in general. And statistics showed that the higher educated and the more money a woman made, the less likely she is to be married, especially if she's Black, right? So that's not good, because it's saying, when people are seeing that information, it's saying women have to sacrifice, or choosing to sacrifice, or they can't have it both. Can't have it both ways. Pick a struggle, right?
Yep.
It's one of those situations. Pick a struggle. And I think we want, for lack of a very better term, we want to marry those two: financial freedom and independence and success, and family, where we don't have to sacrifice one for the other. Is that, would that be a good goal, do you think?
I remember that people told me that by me getting my master's, and then when I went back to work on my doctorate, that no one would marry me. And they were like, "You're just not going to get married, Nadia." And then I remember when I wanted to buy a house, and all while I was single. And it wasn't something that I picked up subliminally, or like you talked about earlier. Like it was a very overt message from multiple people that were like, if you ever want to get married, you might want to pause all this education and this whole career pursuit. But luckily, I met someone that didn't matter to him. But you're right. And I have a lot of friends who, unfortunately, they're very educated, very brilliant, very beautiful, and very single.
Wow. I think this will be a conversation for another day, because we'll wrap up soon. But I think we need to dig into more of why that happens. Is it, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Or are men not wanting women like that, who are very educated? Like, why was that messaging being given to you? Or is it that women are pushing away men? Again, that's a different topic for a different day, but it got my head going and things of that nature. So, but before we go, again, I want to definitely I will promote it myself, get as many women over to you as possible. So can you talk a little bit more about your business, your book, and anything else you have going on that you want to share with the people?
Absolutely. So you can find out more about my business at the Doyenne Agency. We work with a lot of founders and helping them to build teams, to get support, and not being the sole salesperson. Because once you learn how to sell, you still need support. The book, Sell Like a Lady, you can head over to selllikealady.com, or it's on Amazon. Great book, great resource to get started, to just starting to get those skills and be more confident in sales.
Well, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, go out there. I think that it is important for men to read, essentially, like, for lack of a better term, and forgive my clumsiness here, women's self-help books, and women to read men's self-help books. Like, we got to know the other person's struggle. We got to know. So it doesn't matter, male or female. Sell Like a Lady is something that would be good, because oftentimes men, you may have ladies on your team, and you need to know the ideology of who you're dealing with. Like Dr. Brown was saying, women are approaching this differently. They're a little more apprehensive naturally by like sales. They don't want it to be transactional and things of that nature. So definitely head over to selllikealady.com and the DoyenneAgency.com and support Dr. Lydia. Dr. Lydia, I'm sorry, not Dr. Lydia. That's the name of my professor I just got done dealing with. I'm sorry, Dr. Nadia. Nadia, like, I'm telling you, this stuff is still spinning in my head. Dr. Nadia. So my apologies for that, but thank you so much for joining the REVELSations podcast. I really appreciate it. This has been helpful to me to understand that there are women out there who are advocating for other women. The 12% really shocked me, that only 12% reaches $100,000 threshold. And it's so good that you're out there trying to help women do great things. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.